Hi, I'm Sherry Strong. I am a food philosopher, chef, nutritionist. I'm also the founder of Sweet Freedom Life and the author of Return to Food, the Life-Changing Anti-Diet. I have been researching and talking about food for almost 40 years. As a young person in school, at the age of 14, I was super curious about food, nutrition, the science around it, the politics, believe it or not. I actually handed in to my science teacher an assignment, unrequested, not part of the curriculum, on basically the controversy behind cholesterol. So for almost 40 years, I have been a keen foodie researcher and a keen cook from the age of 5. So 47 years to date. Not a good cook. When I was 5 years old, my parents found me in the wee hours of the morning before daylight, burning things on top of the stove, putting toast in the toaster, and if we had fire alarms by then, it would have gone off. So I just loved cooking and I loved food. And I'm also one of these people who at birth was born being fed baby formula because my mom was told by doctors and nurses that baby formula was better for her baby than breast milk. Crazy for anyone who knows about nutrition and the 300 unique compounds in breast milk. So I grew up with sugar addiction, and I also grew up in the mental, emotional, and spiritual poverty that created dependency on sugar and food. And I was a food addict, and through school I had severe depression. And at my worst, I was actually twice my size when I became a chef in the mid-90s in Australia. And I went on to lose the weight. I then went on to hold positions of influence. Sorry, just had an interruption there. I then went on to hold positions of influence in places like I was the Victorian Chair of Nutrition Australia, the Melbourne head of Slow Food, and the curator and co-founder of the World Wellness Project. And I went on to write that book, Return to Food, the Life-Changing Anti-Diet. But what I didn't really resolve and deal with is I still had this low level of sugar addiction. So I wasn't twice my size as I was in the mid-90s. I wasn't experiencing all these terrible symptoms of pain and inflammation from excessive sugar consumption. But I was just wanting it. So I would just have one muffin, here and there, one glass of wine, one soft drink, like a gin and tonic, or one croissant at the farmer's market, just pizza once a week. And I was just wanting it into this low level of sugar addiction that was problematic in my life. And I was not ready to give up sugar. And so about 6 months before my mother was hospitalized, a colleague of mine who I was doing some work for his company, he said, "You need to take up a cause." And he said, "You need to take up sugar." And I remember being terrified and thinking, there's no flipping way I'm ready to give up sugar. And being very threatened and scared by the prospect of doing that. But it was in the back of my mind. And although I didn't feel ready for it, I felt scared and I thought, who am I to take up this challenge? It sat there in the back of my mind. And fast forward 6 months later, and I almost lost my mum. She was admitted to the hospital with heart, liver, and kidney failure after taking a fluoroquinine antibiotic. So research that stuff is nasty, okay? And she had been nursing her sister through the last stages of a very painful cancer. It was traumatic for her, and she was using sugar as a coping mechanism, as a way of actually coping, with the stress and the heartache and the pain and stuffing it all down, with food and sugar in particular. So her immune system was very weak, and when she took this fluoroquinine antibiotic, she then got really, really sick and ended up almost dying. And while she was in the hospital, she's living right now. She still has a disability from it, so she can't use her hands and she can't walk on her own because of it, but she's alive and I'm really grateful for that. While she was in the hospital, I started to look around, and I looked around at not just the patients in the hospital, but the people actually treating the patients in the hospital. And I realized that most people were not looking well. And there were thin people and overweight people that just, you could see the life force wasn't in their face any longer. And so I had this kind of moment of like, man, we are like, and I knew this, like I knew it intellectually, And I've been, in this field, working in this field for over 20 years. So I understood on a certain level, but I got it on a whole new level. And one day there was a woman admitted into the hospital bed beside my mom. And she was admitted because she had broken her leg in a diabetes-induced stroke. So she was a tall and slender woman, and a lot of people wouldn't identify her as being unhealthy, as we often do with slender people and fit people. But she clearly was, that she consumed so much sugar as a diabetic that she had a stroke and broke her leg in the fall. And while she was in the hospital, during the hospital visit, her family brought in this big tray of Tim Hortons donuts for her to eat during her entire visit. It sat there the whole time. And when she left the hospital and they were, releasing her, the doctor had this conversation with her. And I remember overhearing it and thinking, that is not something most people would understand. She was talking in complex, scientific jargon around carbohydrates and food and what she should and shouldn't eat. And I couldn't imagine that it registered on any level. And so what we're seeing now is we've come so far in our sugar consumption and processed foods. I talk about in Return to Food, the lethal recipe, and how we're actually eating foods that are processed with all the nourishment out of it and then chemicals on top of it, which is killing us. Not one meal actually results in death, but it is one meal at a time we're actually eating ourselves to death. And I realized in that moment that I needed to actually do something. And I can honestly say, even as traumatizing and polarizing and really overwhelming as that experience was, I wasn't ready to give up sugar. But I knew in the process of actually doing this that somehow I would be. And Sweet Freedom, I want to tell you, came about from this, but it's not about an approach for perfect eating. The whole kind of Sweet Freedom concept is just to have freedom around our food, freedom about what we eat and how we eat, and not freedom to have whatever we want, because that's actually creating part of the problem. But for us to actually want things that really nourish, energize, protect us, things that are good for us and things that are good for our body. So the Sweet Freedom podcast is going to be not only about sugar, it's going to be about food. It's going to be about all the aspects that will actually give us food freedom. In our online programs, which we have several, we really talk about more than food. Food is definitely foundational, and we show you how to eat in a way that nourishes, energizes, and protects your body. And that's good for you, your body, and the planet. But we also know that our relationship with food is far more complex than most of us really kind of are conscious about. If you're struggling with sugar, if you've come to Sweet Freedom, you probably have a hint and an understanding of how complex it is. But what I've learned over the years of working with people is when I worked with the nutrition piece and they had an issue with food and disease-related things, telling them what to eat and what not to eat gave them a certain level of success. And a lot of people could kind of, break through, and for a day, a week, a month, or even a year, they could actually get it under control. But unless they dealt with the other pieces that are part of the whole issue, it was only a matter of time before they relapsed. And so what I found is if I got them into the kitchen cooking, they then had another level and measure of success. And then I moved on and I helped them understand. I had a cooking school in Melbourne, Australia for many years. And so I could start to see this unfolding. But nutrition and cooking alone weren't enough for most people who really struggled, and particularly long-term with their relationship with food. So what I discovered is as I help people end nutritional confusion and really understand what it is we're meant to be eating and how we're meant to be eating for the human species, mammals are species-specific eaters. And although humans are the most adaptive, there are certain things that were meant for us and certain things that weren't meant for us. And the more we eat closer to how we're actually meant to as the human species, the healthier we become, and the more in control of our food, the stronger our bodies are, the stronger our physiology and our mental state is, and the more we can actually resist sugar and what I refer to as the lethal recipe. I then found out that if I started working with people to actually work on what I now call hypernourishment, so I started to look into their lives as I looked into my own and figure out what is it about us. We're holistic beings. We're not just physical beings. Food's not just about the physical. It has so many other aspects to it. But if you start to look into your life and you see what emotionally, mentally, and spiritually is toxic in your life and where you're malnourished in those areas, and you start to change that over and start to nourish yourself, remove the toxicity, start to nourish yourself mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, making the changes in the physical becomes much easier. So I want to share with you, over the period of time that we're doing this podcast, I want to share with you things that give you freedom in all areas of your life. It's not just about sugar. It's not just about food. It's not just about how we think and feel. It's about all the components that holistically make us a human, and a happy, healthy human. So in the future, I want to actually be sharing topics that are related to anything that actually makes us feel free and truly free, right? So there are going to be tons of things that we're going to cover. I certainly would love your input into who you'd love to hear on our podcast. Who is it you'd like me to have those conversations with? And I want to be asking the tough questions, as well as what would you like me to share about Sweet Freedom and our journey? And what's the information that you most feel you need in order to actually achieve freedom in your life? So I want to go everywhere. I want to go into relationships. I want to go into finances. I want to go into anything that actually helps you and gives you the tools and the resources so you can actually have freedom in your life. So that's kind of where we're going. I also wanted to share with you a little bit about Sweet Freedom, if you don't know it already, and what we stand for. So basically, the first thing is I believe that nature is our most powerful source of nourishment. So nature, as in the physical environment we come from, and also human nature, our nature, that when we're in touch with what truly makes us happy and healthy, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, as well as physically, that these are the things that actually set us free. And that there are many things in our life right now that are so far from nature, they're creating a level of discomfort and cognitive dissonance within our bodies, within our lives, that we're actually seeking substances and behaviors of addiction to actually push those feelings down or avoid those feelings. So I want to deal with those things. I want to share with you the things that I believe can actually help you get back to your nature and to nature. Because right now is it's an amazing time to be alive, but it's also, for many people, a troubling time. I saw a New Yorker cartoon where it had some people at the office, and they said, the caption underneath is, would you like to join us after work for drinks and pretend that the world isn't actually falling apart? And I think that for all the lovely distractions that we have on the planet, there's a lot of us who are very tuned in and tapped into, there's many people on the planet who are actually in pain. And maybe you're one of them. Maybe there's a part of your life that's really painful. Well, with the Sweet Freedom podcast, I want to be able to offer resources that make you feel good, that give you real life strategies and bring to you stories that really resonate with you, that help you make the shifts, help you tap into that inner reserve of strength within yourself, so that you can actually live what we call sweet freedom. So another part of Sweet Freedom is in the nature piece, is that we're really committed to the food piece being natural. So foods that you can actually replicate in nature. That's really, when I talk about in return to food, what isn't natural are things you can't make in nature. So there are many things that we refer to as natural, and certainly food manufacturers refer to them as natural, but you could never make them in nature. And as I say in return to food, what's good for the body is good for the planet, and what's good for the planet is good for the body without exception. So what's happening now is that the foods that are actually damaging the planet will in some way not be good for us. So we're really committed to sharing information and inspiration and the recipes that we already, share with you on our Sweet Freedom Recipe Wednesdays. These are all recipes that are going to help you to obtain that sweet freedom, that are in line with our values of doing what's best for the planet, and not what's best for our pocketbook. So integrity of ingredients is really important. The recipes are plant biased. So I'm not vegan, I'm not vegetarian, I'm not paleo, I'm not anything. What I'm trying to be is a sustainable, ethical omnivore, and very plant biased. So that's why you'll see with the Sweet Freedom recipes, they're all vegetarian at the very least. Most of them are vegan, Because as a chef for many years, I have always thought that we don't need another chef showing us how to cook a meat dish. There are so many recipes out there. What we need now, we need people to fall in love with plant foods, and in a way that's actually sustainable, because there's many vegan and vegetarian options that are just as unhealthy for the body and the planet. And so I want to find that beautiful balance of something that actually tastes delicious, is actually good for you, that is nourishing for you, and is also good for the planet. So that's why you'll see that our recipes are all plant-based, is because that's what we believe is what the world needs most now. And so we want to be part of that and inspiring people in that way. I'm not trying to be hypocritical. I'm not trying to avoid. I'm just trying to share, this is what I feel we need most of. So that's really, one of the things that we really stand for. So it's unprocessed, chemical-free, organic, slow food in the form of the acronym SLOW, S-L-O-W, seasonal, local, organic, and whole. Big fan of that. So we want to bring you content that's related to that, but also slow food. I used to be the Melbourne head of slow food in Australia, and the whole slow food movement has some really beautiful things that are not just about nutrition, and that there's some really powerful social aspects. We're not just physical beings, and that food is a very powerful tool for connection with one another. We're a social species. We're meant to eat together. And there's cultural aspects of our food that can bring a richness to our life, and a social, exchange that happens when we share a meal that can bring this beautiful richness to our life that can really lead to that sweet freedom. It can lead to us being happier and healthier beings. So that's a big part of it. Another part of sweet freedom that we teach in our online program that I want to bring you, experts in this area, is to actually do the work. That the shifts that happen to actually shift your relationship with food, your body, and the planet, if you've developed decades of habits and behaviors and inner dialogue and self-talk and, deeply entrenched neural pathways, well, if you have all of that, no diet is actually going to reverse that problem overnight. And there is actually work to be done around changing your relationship, changing those inner conversations. And so we're big believers in actually bringing the tools and the strategies that you have to utilize to actually make those changes in your life. And that's what we want to bring to you with Sweet Freedom, the podcast. And as I spoke about before, we stand for hypernourishment. So not just nourishment in the physical. We're really big on, whole plant-based, seasonal, local, organic food. But we're also big on having nourishment in all areas of our life. So the mental, emotional, spiritual, as well as the physical. We want to bring you those resources and people who can actually speak to that and really help you shift your perspective and shift your heart and shift your gut and your intuition to start to move in the direction of truly nourishing yourself from the inside out. The other thing we're big on is meaning and purpose. We truly believe that when you tap into your meaning and purpose on the planet, things shift for you. And I truly believe that there are many people out there that are feeling this low level of discomfort because they know they're wasting their ride. They're wasting this ticket. And I refer to that as that we've got a ticket to live a life, right? And if we're lucky, we get 70 to 100 plus years. But even in the scheme of time, that's a really short period of time. And I don't know about past lives or future lives, but what I do know is that we have this one life. And I feel that if we've come from another life or whatever, or if this is the only one, you really want to use that. And I believe that we are beings that are very much driven by meaning and purpose. And that there are superficial meanings and purpose, that we can actually give our lives. And then there's deeper ones. The ones that we truly feel on a gut level and a soul level that we're called to do. And so we want to give resources and help people get into that place where they're actually listening to the calling of their soul. And that will give you meaning and purpose. And when you are on purpose and your life has meaning, you're much less likely to use food to stuff down that feeling, that low or high level of discomfort that comes from being off track of your purpose. So that's another big thing for us. Another thing is love or fear. I just posted an illustration. Well, I just wrote a little thing that said choices. Love, and had a little heart in the O, and then a tick box. Fear, and then a little tick box. and then a big tick on love. I truly think that the whole source of the problems that we have environmentally, politically, as far as all the things that are actually destroying the planet, are basically because of humans going into fear and scarcity and not feeling like they have enough. There's a beautiful book by Lynn Twist called The Soul of Money. And she talks about the power of enough. And along the journey through the Sweet Freedom podcast, I'm actually in the process of downsizing my living. So to live in a tiny house. And I want that because I want sweet freedom, not just financially, but I want to take up less space on the planet. I want to use less resources, but I also want to live somewhere that's beautiful and is actually befitting of making my soul feel good. So that for me is an act of love and self-care for myself. And I just want to share that journey as well along the way. So because I think it'll be interesting for people, and it really, I think, will help people to reframe the concept of enough, that we don't have to live in a tiny little hovel, that there are ways of living on the planet where we're not taking up massive resources, but we still live in an elegant, beautiful, and meaningful way. So the other thing we'll be talking about, and I have a keynote presentation. I do corporate keynote presentations. I'm actually off to Calgary next week to speak at a dentist's wellness conference on becoming the CEO of your body and your life. Okay, so it's called Eat to Lead. I may have borrowed that from Brene Brown, paraphrased. I'm a bit of a paraphraser, thief of quotes, adapter of quotes, and so that's a big part of this, is that all of these things really come down to us becoming the CEO and leader of our life. And so these are the things that we stand for. These are the things that we want to bring up, these issues, and bring to you. Because when you can actually become the CEO of your body, when you have the food piece under control, and I don't mean controlling as in a diet way, but in this really grounded, nourished way that you're actually relating to food, your body, and the planet, it will enable you to step into your purpose. If your eating habits are out of control, you may lead, in the community and in your purpose and all these other ways, but it's not going to feel grounded. It's not going to feel secure. And I want you to be able to feel the best in your body. So that's another piece that we're big on. And in that meaning and purpose, I really feel that service and having a mission in life is important. So I want to bring people on who can actually talk about that. And from a really powerful and meaningful place. So I'm just going to check and see. I've got a little list here. I've talked about what Sweet Freedom stands for, a little bit of the Sweet Freedom journey so far. One of the things that started Sweet Freedom Sunday was I loved watching Oprah's Super Soul Sunday. And I loved actually waking up in the morning. See, I used to be religious, and I was really turned off by religion and how people manipulated religion and how they made other people feel. And so I left religious life when I was 21. I was actually studying to become a missionary. I like to joke and say that I discovered the missionary position and left the vocation. Went to Australia to practice. Ended up marrying the first person I practiced with. But I threw out the whole kind of spirituality piece for about 10 years. And it was really a kind of a lost in the wilderness stage for me. If I think about my hero's journey, I was in that dark abyss, just kind of sorting things out. It was also when I was at my biggest. And one of the things that brought me out of my abyss and helped me start to nourish myself was to actually listen to my spirit, to actually listen to the calling of my soul. And the more I listened to my intuition, the clearer and happier and grounded my life got, and the more fulfilling it got. When I ignored my intuition, I always got into trouble in my life. And so I started to live from that place and really getting in touch. And with Sweet Freedom, we really refer to the spirituality part as that which makes you feel alive and whole. So we don't refer to it in the religious sense. Although many people who are religious find the Sweet Freedom teachings very congruent with what they're learning. Just for me, I never found that church or community. I looked for it, but I never found it where I actually really felt comfortable. And each Sunday morning that I used to wake up when Oprah would have her Super Soul Sunday, I felt like it was a little bit of, church to me. Farmers markets are a bit of church to me. They really give me a sense of meaning and community and feeling like I'm part of something bigger than myself. But I loved having a little bit of inspiration, and that's why I created Sweet Freedom Sundays. Is when Super Soul Sundays weren't regular, I wanted something regular that if I couldn't listen to, at least I could contribute and be part of that conversation, that people felt uplifted on a Sunday morning. A lot of people listen to it at night or on Monday morning. That's kind of the reason behind it. And although we have a 7-day challenge that we give out to the world, it helps people eat less sugar. We have a 21-day challenge. These are all online programs that we sell online. And we have an 8-week online program, which is a deeper dive into the concepts that look into our relationship with sugar, with food, with our bodies, and with that inner dialogue, that inner relationship. That program is really where you get to connect with me. And so you get to really work on your stuff with me. That's an 8-week program where we connect. So those are kind of the touch points. I have the book out there, but I wanted something that brought in other voices and conversations, along with times where I wanted to actually do a deep dive or have a masterclass or a deeper conversation, around the philosophies that I teach, around different issues that actually come up that are related to sweet freedom. So that's where the podcast was born out of, as far as my idea of what we're actually going to do here. So, we talked about a long format. Our Our Sweet Freedom Sundays, our podcast, are going to be anywhere from around 25 minutes to an hour, depending on, who we have on or what I have to cover. So I'm not kind of restricting it too much to begin with. And we are starting to have it out for you on Sunday morning. So you can listen when you get up first thing in the morning or throughout the week. So we're going to do it with a video format like this, but we're going to have the MP4s, the recording available for you. And as we get, down the track, we'll also even look at getting transcriptions of the podcast for you. Okay. So how can you engage with us? As I mentioned, we have got the 7-day challenge, the 21-day challenge, the 8-week online program. We've got a public Facebook group that you can actually join, and we like to post some inspiration there for the 7-day challenge and the 21-day challenge. We have, it's the Sweet Freedom Life Facebook group. We also have Instagram, Sweet Freedom Life at Instagram, so you can actually engage with us there. We've got a YouTube channel that you can look at all kinds of videos. There's also heaps of archival videos on my Sherry Strong YouTube channel. And feel free to subscribe and click the little bell to get notifications of when new videos come up. And there's questions and comments. So we really field those in the Facebook group. And if you have any, wherever this is posted now below, there'll either be a place for comments or directing you to where you can actually ask questions and comments for what we're doing. So I think that really gives you an idea of not only what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're going to be doing it, what we stand for, what it is this podcast we wish to create in the world, the change we wish to create in the world. And I think that's really what I want to share with you. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you have any guests that you'd like us to cover, any topics, anything you'd like to know about the process of actually obtaining sweet freedom in your life, let us know in the comments section or in the Facebook group. We're here to actually be a resource to help you obtain that. Now, one thing I want to leave you with is I truly believe this is the world's most holistic sugar cessation program that we have. But what it isn't is it's not a judgy kind of place. I'm not going to send fear through your body to get you to get off of sugar. I'm going to educate you. So there might be some things that kind of trigger you or make you feel, oh boy, I really need to look at this. But I'm not going to do the fear-mongering piece. There's a lot of marketers who encourage that piece, but it's not for me. It doesn't work for me, and it's not how I want to lead in the world. So our environment, our community, we have a policy within the Facebook community, our private groups in particular, that we're not allowed to post negative things that create toxicity in that actual group. And though most people are really good about not doing it towards other people, what most people really struggle with, and particularly people who are struggling with sugar addiction, is saying things that are negative about themselves. And so it's one thing to kind of journal and get it out and get it from inside here out onto the paper. But when you put on the Facebook group things that you would never dream of saying to another person, we don't actually allow for that. We want to just rub love into your wounds, as I learned from a woman named Annie Lalla. That is our goal, is to actually identify what it is in your life, help you identify it, do the work. This is no replacement for therapy or intense medical care. It's just a place for you to come to start to frame things in a way that serve your body and your life. And so we want to create that loving environment and places where you can actually go to be lifted up, to be detoxed mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, to be nourished mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And so as you start to travel in this path and you have like-minded people around you, you have community that lifts you up and supports you and inspires you, and you can then actually teach that and live that example in your life. I truly believe that this calling of what I have to do to help people achieve that inner peace of taking care of themselves in a holistic way will actually bring peace to the world, and that ripple effect will be really powerful. And as we lift up 1 million plus people to get off of sugar and to live in this way, we believe that their ripple effect can actually impact millions too. So there you go. That is the intention behind the Sweet Freedom podcast. Please leave us your questions and comments, like us, subscribe, tick the little bell if you're watching this on YouTube to get notified of our next episode, and let us know what it is you want and what you like and what you think of this. But really keeping in mind that kindness rocks. That's what we're all about. Please make your comments and your questions and what it is you're looking for. I want you to ask yourself, is this coming out of love or is it coming out of fear? And we want to be putting drops of love into the ripples and of the ocean of life rather than little drops of poison. There's a lot out there that people are afraid of, that there's a lot of toxicity going out there, and we will actually delete comments that we feel are toxic, even if someone's contributing them and they think that it's in a constructive way. It's just not what we're about. We're constructive in a really loving and positive way, and we think you can actually achieve a lot more through being lovingly constructive and honest, as opposed to a way that actually tears people down. So that's what we're looking for. If that resonates with you, if you resonate with being a part of a community like that, if you want to learn how to achieve sweet freedom in your life, we would love for you to subscribe to the podcast and share it with as many people as you feel called to do. So I'm going to kind of leave it at that. No, I'm going to definitely leave it at that. And I look forward to having you as part of our community, sharing the things that I'm going to learn and grow with. This is not a zero sugar tolerance or zero processed food tolerance kind of group. We're really about experiencing the full pleasures of life. I often say I'd rather live to 100 with chocolate than 120 without chocolate, because I do believe that chocolate is God's way of saying he loves us and wants us to be happy, to paraphrase Benjamin Franklin. And I truly believe that we can actually have beautiful, delicious sweetness in our life and experience the true sweet life and sweet freedom. So I look forward to seeing you in the next podcast.